Hello! Welcome to another wonderful episode of the Nerd News Desk. Today, looking at comics that are coming out this week. And kind of screwed up my intro there. Did things in the wrong order a little bit, but whatever. You guys are here. I think we've got sound. Do we have sound?
Not this week.
We have sound, so good. Everything is working. It's going to be a good week. We're going to do a bunch of videos this week. It's going to be good. Positive energy, positive thinking going forward. And we're talking about comics today because, of course, today is Tuesday. We had a nice Labor Day long weekend, and tomorrow is New Comic Book Day. So let's take a look at some of the big things coming out this week. And amazingly enough, the book that a lot of people thought would never actually come out, Spawn 300. Did you think Spawn would make it to 300 issues when it launched? I know I did not. I was there when it launched, and I did not think it would ever make it to this point. And yet, here it is. Now, it does say, a little bit of a lie here, Spawn makes history with this 300th issue. Spawn becomes the longest-running independent series in comic book history. That's not 100% true, because that actually ties with what had been the longest-running independent comic, and that was Cerebus. So now it is tied with Cerebus. When 301 comes out, then it's actually the longest running. But it's also one of those things where it's like Monday Night Raw. They will say it's the longest running weekly episodic television show in television history or something like that. And it's because they put all those disclaimers on it. Weekly, episodic, this is the longest running independent because, of course, action, adventure, Superman, Batman, all of those have been going a lot longer. Avengers has gone on. Iron Man, Daredevil, all of these have been running a lot longer. But this being the independent is what makes it the big deal. And it's such a big deal that it is launching tomorrow with, I believe, 23 different main covers, including the like 1 in 100 variants, the 1 in 50 variants, all of that kind of stuff. I believe it's 23 different covers. And then there are some store-specific ones that you'll only be able to get from ordering like online from Mile High. And I think Midtown has their own cover and things like that. So a lot of different covers to look for if you're interested in that. But yeah, so there you go. It also says in this little blurb down here, records will be broken with 301. Well, technically, yes, that is when it becomes the longest running independent series in comic book history. But anyway, let's not obsess about the small details. Let's move on. Berserker Unbound #2 from Jeff Lemire, Mike Deodato. I like the idea of this. The first issue, it spent the entire issue doing the setup, and the setup was given away on the cover. But it looks like it has the makings of being a fun series. It's only 4 issues, so I'm not sure exactly how much they're going to be able to pack into the 4 issues. I'm kind of afraid that it's going to be 4 issues that sets up for a longer series, and that's only a problem in the sense that you want to get a complete story when you buy a miniseries. If it's only 4 issues, the 4 issues should be a complete series. So I don't know at the end if he's just going to head off to take on the new world, to walk cross country, if he dies, if he goes back to his own time, who knows. But being that it's a 4-issue miniseries, they got to get the story rolling. The first issue took a while to get it there, but it looks like with this second issue fully immersed into his new world, we may be able to get where we want to get going. So I'm looking forward to this. High hopes, positivity. Word #4. Word is one of these books you try to explain it to people, and it's really hard to explain. It's if Captain America became Constantine, became Hellboy, kind of a weird book to look at. But the story is a lot of fun. The artwork is fantastic. Antonio Fuso, who does the book, or Fuso, I'm not sure how you pronounce that. Great artwork. Just fantastic book, a lot of fun to read, especially because he does dabble in the supernatural with a lot of interesting stuff and their own takes on stuff like We've seen like the Abominable Snowman or Sasquatch, whatever, things like that, demonic possession, ghosts, whatever. So it's fun to see another world, another universe building around taking on that stuff with a fun character who's kind of an amalgam of different stuff we've seen in comics, which makes it help to feel fresh and to feel new. And I totally butchered that sentence because I changed it halfway through, but who cares? Let's move on. Batman 181 Facsimile Edition. I love these Facsimile Edition comics. You can see here, this is a classic cover. This is the introduction here of Poison Ivy. And one thing that makes these Facsimile Editions so great is that they come with all of the original ads and everything included, the letters, columns, everything like that is in there. Only, I think, once or twice have I seen anything sort of edited out, and it's for things that we would not take so lightly today. I'll just put it that way. Things that would be a little incendiary or off-putting today. But nonetheless, the books are a reproduction of those original comics, and they're done on a newsprint type paper. Now, it's a higher quality newsprint. It's not the same stuff as like Alterna puts out there. It's a nice bleached heavyweight newsprint type paper, but it still has that rough feel to it, and it still has that good smell to it. If you've ever picked up a comic book and just smelled it, smelled the ink and smelled the paper, the Alterna comics are good for that. These are good for that too. So I really enjoy these facsimiles, and again, it's a reminder that the stories that they did back then were often a lot better than the ones we get today. We have Deceased, A Good Day to Die. Deceased is getting its first spin-off series here. And I believe this just says #1. I believe this one is just a spin-off one-shot, oversized extra pages. But I do believe there's another one in the works to come after the series wraps. And I may be wrong on the timing of that. But this kind of talks about some of the other stuff happening in the DC universe while the main characters are doing this thing. And if you haven't been reading Deceased, basically it's sort of this Elseworlds type storyline. A signal coming from screens is turning people into zombies, more or less. If you've ever seen a movie like Cell, where cell phone signals are turning people crazy, or there was one, The Signal, I think it was called, similar type idea. It's that type of thing. People are turning crazy, turning into zombies, turning into whatever, and so the superheroes have to fight against them. A little awkward that it launched in the middle of summer because it really feels like a Halloween type thing. I guess they didn't want to launch it at Halloween and have it run until Christmas, so they launched it in the summer, and I guess it'll wrap up around Halloween time. It is kind of fun, although I wish they had done it just for the month of October, have a new issue every week, and then wrap up at Halloween. But, hey, whatever. It is what it is, and it is a pretty good deal of fun. Doomsday Clock 11, finally, they promise it's going to be here tomorrow. I'll find out in a couple of hours and make sure when we unpack comics for tomorrow. But yes, Doomsday Clock 11 is supposed to be here, and it says the truth behind quote-unquote rebirth that happened a few years ago, the truth behind the New 52, all of that kind of stuff. So hopefully it's going to wrap up a lot of the threads that we've been dealing with, but I think this is also going to deal with the timeline into the future and how this leads to the Legion of Superheroes, which is also going to be launching this week. I believe there's something happening in here that is going to lead to what happens there, and how it sets up for Legion and hopefully opens the door for that type of stuff in the future. But nonetheless, I'm excited for this. Finally, we're going to get it. It's only, like a year and a half late? So better late than never, I guess. So here it is, Legion of Superheroes Millennium 1 of 2. Now, this is a two-part special that is going to be taking one of the characters from the Legion of Superheroes and is going to show how she survives 1,000 years into the future. And from what I believe this is going to be, I think, Saturn Girl, who's in Doomsday Clock, we've seen, who reappeared in the last issue of Superman and also in Supergirl, which we should finally get that reprint tomorrow, with the much darker Lightning Lad in it. But I believe it's going to show how she goes from Doomsday Clock in the modern time with the Dr. Manhattan changed time stream into the future to survive all the way down to then restart the Legion, or however she's going to do that. Now, in the original Legion continuity, there is a series called Legion 89 that started, that went to Legion 90, Legion 91, and basically it showed how Phantom Girl from the Legion of Superheroes was actually from the modern, current era, and because of she was from the future, and the shape-shifting Durlin was from the modern time. They swapped places, and Phantom Girl, who disappeared in a Legion of Superheroes issue, appeared in the present. The Durlin, the shape changer, went to the future. He became R.J. Brand. He became the guy who funded the Legion of Superheroes. So Legion in the modern time led to Legion of Superheroes in the future because of this time swap that they were able to do. It was like one of those brilliant... It took like 30 years to tell this whole story, but they did it. It was great. They pulled all these threads together. It was fantastic. I kind of get the feeling we're going to see Saturn Girl go to the future and redo the history this time, where now she is the one that helps to bring the Legion together instead of it being the shapeshifter. Instead of it being a time swap, she's somehow going to survive into the future. Not 100% sure, but we will see how exactly that works out. But again, hope it turns out well. I was a big fan of the Legion when they had all the continuity. When they lost it, I was a little upset, but whatever. We will continue on. Hope for the best. Positivity. Next up, over to the Marvel side, we have more Absolute Carnage books this week, including Part 2 of Scream. If you've been following any of the Carnage story for a long time, you know he has these offshoots, these babies, so to speak, this ongoing family, whatever. And again, if you want to see a preview of this, you can go to previewsworld.com, check it out from Diamond Comics Distribution. They've got it there if you want to get a quick peek at that, for those of you following Absolute Carnage. And of course, there's another Absolute Carnage book, but this time it's in the Symbiote Spider-Man series spin-off. And this one, Symbiote Spider-Man, tells the story of Peter Parker, Spider-Man, when he got the black suit from Secret Wars, kind of updating that, telling the story, moving it forward a little bit because of that rubber band time stream that Marvel Comics has. But somehow something with it ties into Absolute Carnage here, so they've opened up the possibility of having this book set in the past give you something that they can play with in the modern time with Absolute Carnage, so it feels like there's more history to the character, there's more history to the things that are going on in the series. So if you have a book set in the past and it's with the what essentially becomes Venom, it kind of makes sense then to tie it into Carnage one way or another, and they apparently figured out how to do that. House of X number 4. And here we go again. Jonathan Hickman, superstar writer, it even says. Superstar writer Jonathan Hickman continues his reshaping of the X universe with this mini-series. Now, how exactly this is going to lead into the new upcoming books, if you've seen the new issue of Previews that talks about all the new books that are coming out in the next couple months, you've seen the just explosion of X books coming out. You can, in fact, go to previewsworld.com where we're pulling up these listings. You can look through the virtual catalog online and see all the books that are coming out. There are a lot of X books. Pretty much everything X is getting re-released. New Excalibur and X-Factor and X-Force and everything else is going to be there, and this is going to continue to set up. So if you're a huge fan of the X-Men, this is your time, because Marvel, now that they have the rights back from Fox, they are finally jumping whole hog into bringing these books back. We have Immortal Hulk 23. If you've not been reading this, I highly recommend it. It's a lot of fun. It really turns Hulk back into the horror book it was meant to be. It's a good time, good book, good story, good artwork. This is probably the one thing that Al Ewing has done that I have been most excited for out of everything he's ever done. And he's done some decent stuff. He's done some stuff that's not so great. But this Immortal Hulk has been just fantastic in the way it does some pretty horrific things with the character. It's very enjoyable. Again, highly recommended. Now, for the kids, we do have Over the Garden Wall, Soulful Symphonies #2. If you are a fan of this show from Cartoon Network, Over the Garden Wall, it is a great cartoon. It's one of my daughter's favorites. And Over the Garden Wall continues some of the stories, some of the things that we've seen in the cartoon moving forward. The artwork is usually really good. The fantastic is the writing? Yes, sure, why not? The fantastic is the writing, we'll say it that way. And it even has, because music plays a pretty fair part of the show. A lot of times in the comic they do have sheet music, there are songs, there are lyrics, things like that. If you play an instrument and you want to pull them up and play them, hey, send me a link and maybe we'll take a listen to that at some point in the future. Another book for the kids here, The Adventures of Mr. Crypt and Baron Rat. If you've been following Alterna Comics, these are the guys that do the newsprint. This is supposed to come out tomorrow, although a lot of times Diamond and Alterna don't get along very well with release schedules. Peter, what is his last name? Samedi? I'm not sure how you pronounce it. He's talked before about how Diamond will sometimes get the books and then not release them, or they release them all at the same time, or whatever. It's really kind of out of his hands. This is supposed to come out tomorrow. I hope it does. This is one, if you've got kids 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, they're going to love these. Baron Rat is a fun little character, always gets in a lot of mischief. Mr. Crypt is just a delightful, very proper, nice guy. He just happens to be a skeleton with a mustache, and so people don't tend to like him. And now they're doing a crossover between them, which is kind of a fun idea to see these kids' books come together in a crossover. Not the type of thing you see every day in modern comics, especially kids' comics. And then two here that we're going to kind of talk together at the same time. We've got Rocky and Bullwinkle presents The Best of Mr. Peabody and Sherman, and we've got Underdog. Now, those of you who are familiar with these Roach Studios, cartoon characters, Underdog and Peabody and Sherman, of course, staples of kids comics and cartoons for a long time. American Mythology picked up the license to do these. American Mythology is doing a lot of licensed stuff, especially with the some of the John Carter spin-off stuff that Dynamite doesn't have, and that type of stuff. But the thing that makes these neat, and my kids do enjoy these, and I enjoy looking through them too, the thing that makes them so much fun is the fact that they don't just give you a new story, and they don't just do reprints of the old stuff, they mix them together. And that's one of the fun things. They do this with Casper, they do this with Richie Rich, they do this with Pink Panther. Usually the first story in the book is a brand new story, 5, 6 pages, whatever. And then you get a couple reprints of old stuff from the 60s, early 70s, old newsprint comics, stuff that they've scanned in and they've tried to clean up and remaster, if you will, the old comics, which is nice to see. And then there's some artwork pinups, fun stuff in the back of the book, and it's just a neat package to look at all together, to see new stuff and old stuff put together, and the different incarnations of some of the characters. Like Pink Panther, sometimes he speaks, sometimes he doesn't. Sometimes he does interact with Inspector Clouseau, sometimes he does not. So it's just kind of an interesting thing to see the way that they play off of that with these different stories. Underdog, again, the same way, new stuff, old stuff, mixed together. Peabody and Sherman's going to be the same way. And they actually tie it in as a Rocky and Bullwinkle book, so maybe we'll get some Rocky and Bullwinkle reprints along with it. I don't know. But again, if you've loved these cartoons growing up, if you've ever had a fondness for them, it's just a nice, fun package to see where it's got the old comics and the new stuff mixed together. Good time for everybody involved. So that's going to do it. That's some of the stuff coming out this week. Of course, there's a lot more stuff. It's going to be expensive for a lot of you guys out there. There's some stuff I'm looking forward to. I know there's some stuff you guys are looking forward to. Something specific you want to talk about. Any book that comes out this week that you actually read it this week and you're like, this is great. Hey, let's talk about it. Make sure to leave some comments below, and it's something that we can discuss at some point in the future. But for now, guys, that's going to do it for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.